Jake Paul's recent assertion that he wants to fight Anthony Joshua in 2026 has sparked significant debate within the boxing world, attracting criticism from fans, pundits, and even his own promotional team. The audacious challenge, coming from a YouTuber turned boxer, has led many to question whether Paul is serious or if this is just another publicity stunt designed to keep him in the spotlight. While Jake Paul has built a reputation for self-promotion and controversy, the prospect of him stepping into the ring with a former heavyweight champion like Anthony Joshua has raised doubts about his ability to compete at the highest levels of professional boxing. Jake Paul's journey in the boxing world has been unconventional. Having started as a YouTube personality, Paul's transition into boxing was met with skepticism. However, over time he has made significant strides in the sport, winning several of his bouts, albeit against opponents who were often criticized for not being true boxers or coming from the MMA world. This has led to accusations that Paul is more of a spectacle than a legitimate boxer. His recent challenge to Anthony Joshua is the latest in a series of high-profile call-outs, which some believe are just attempts to garner attention rather than sincere efforts to step up and face top-tier talent. The motivation behind Paul's challenge to Joshua is clear. He has publicly stated that he believes he would beat Anthony Joshua in a fight. Paul has repeatedly criticized Joshua's fighting style, claiming that he lacks a solid chin and has stiff movements. Despite the fact that Paul and Joshua are friends, Paul remains confident in his ability to defeat the former two-time heavyweight champion. His comments about Joshua's weaknesses have generated significant reactions, with some fans agreeing with Paul's assessment, while others find it laughable given Joshua's proven pedigree in the sport. While Paul's bravado may be seen as part of his larger promotional strategy, there are significant challenges that he would face in a fight against a boxer of Joshua's caliber. Joshua, who has been a dominant force in the heavyweight division for years, has a size, strength, and experience advantage over Paul that cannot be ignored. The discrepancy between the two fighters is vast, and many experts believe that Paul would be completely out of his depth against a seasoned heavyweight like Joshua. This has led to criticism from figures within the boxing community, including Joe Rogan, who has been vocal about his skepticism regarding Paul's challenge. Rogan, a prominent commentator and podcaster, has questioned the legitimacy of Paul's challenge, particularly his decision to wait until 2026 to face Joshua. Rogan finds it strange that Paul would want to wait several years to fight a boxer of Joshua's stature, suggesting that the delay could be a strategy for Paul to bulk up or enhance his physicality through other means. Rogan has even gone so far as to accuse Paul of using steroids, further fueling the growing suspicion that Paul's challenge is not a genuine desire to compete, but rather an attempt to manipulate his image and hype up a potential showdown for financial gain. Despite these accusations, Jake Paul and his team continue to defend the challenge, with Nakisa Badarian, Paul's promotional partner, expressing confidence in their plans for future high-profile bouts. Badarian has suggested that Paul is interested in facing Joshua as part of his long-term goal of becoming a world champion at cruiserweight. The fight, according to Badarian, would be a test of Paul's limits and would serve as a way to push the boundaries of what's possible in boxing. In his eyes, this potential bout would be similar to Paul's past fight with Mike Tyson, where the goal was to create an event that captivated the world's attention, even if the outcome seemed predictable. Badarian's comments highlight the growing trend of high-profile, spectacle-driven boxing events that draw attention not only from boxing fans, but also from mainstream media. Jake Paul, in his quest to establish himself as a serious contender in the sport, has embraced this philosophy. However, many in the boxing world view his approach as detrimental to the integrity of the sport. Critics argue that Paul's focus on celebrity matches, like his proposed fight with Joshua, takes away from the traditional competition that has defined boxing for decades. One of the primary concerns surrounding Paul's call-out of Joshua is the vast disparity in skill and experience between the two fighters. Anthony Joshua, as a former heavyweight champion, has fought some of the best in the world and has accumulated a wealth of experience in the ring. In contrast, Jake Paul has only fought a handful of opponents, most of whom were not seasoned boxers. While Paul has shown improvement in his boxing technique, he has yet to face an opponent of Joshua's caliber. This lack of experience in the heavyweight division would be a significant disadvantage for Paul in any potential matchup with Joshua. Despite the odds being heavily stacked against him, Jake Paul remains confident in his ability to take on the former champion. His self-belief and the brash nature of his public persona have led many to believe that his call-out is just another attempt to gain attention and build hype for future matches. However, there are others who take Paul's claims seriously, including those within his own camp who believe that the fight would serve as a platform for Paul to test his limits and potentially secure a major victory that could elevate his boxing career. Anthony Joshua's response to Paul's challenge has been somewhat ambiguous. While Joshua has not completely dismissed the idea of facing Paul in the future, he has made it clear that he views the call-out with a mixture of humor and curiosity. Joshua posted a screenshot of a phone conversation with Paul on social media, captioning it with a shushing emoji and the number 2026. This response suggests that Joshua is open to the idea of facing Paul, but not in the immediate future. It's clear that Joshua sees the challenge more as a joke than a real threat, which has fueled further skepticism about the authenticity of Paul's challenge. The back and forth between Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua has not been limited to social media. Several figures within the boxing community, including promoter Eddie Hearn, have weighed in on the possibility of the fight. Hearn, who represents Joshua, has expressed amusement at the idea of the fight, but he has also made it clear that he doesn't see it as a serious challenge. According to Hearn, Joshua would be heavily favored in such a bout, given the vast gap in skill and experience. He has also suggested that Joshua would be more likely to entertain the idea of the fight for the sake of entertainment and banter, rather than as a legitimate boxing contest. Hearn has also criticized Paul for his decision to wait until 2026 to challenge Joshua, arguing that if Paul is serious about the fight, he should make it happen sooner rather than later. According to Hearn, there's a real risk that Paul's skill level won't improve enough to make the fight competitive, and waiting too long could result in a lopsided match that wouldn't benefit either fighter. Hearn's comments reflect the growing skepticism within the boxing community about Paul's ability to compete at the highest level, and many believe that a fight between Paul and Joshua would be more of a spectacle than a legitimate contest. Amir Khan, another former world champion, has also weighed in on the potential matchup, expressing concerns about the dangers Jake Paul would face in such a fight. Khan believes that a fight against Joshua would be a mismatch, with Paul likely facing a brutal defeat that could end his boxing career for good. Khan's sentiments were echoed by Carl Frosch, who warned that Paul could be seriously injured in such a bout. Frosch emphasized that Joshua's size and power would be too much for Paul, and a knockout could potentially end Paul's boxing career permanently. The debate surrounding the potential fight between Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua has highlighted the growing trend of celebrity-driven boxing matches, which often prioritize entertainment value over genuine competition. While these bouts can draw significant attention and generate substantial financial returns, they also raise questions about the future of professional boxing and the ethics of such matchups. Critics argue that these spectacles undermine the integrity of the sport, while supporters contend that they provide a fresh and exciting avenue for boxing to reach new audiences. In the end, the question of whether Jake Paul will ever face Anthony Joshua in the ring remains uncertain. While the fight would undoubtedly generate significant media attention and financial gain for both fighters, it also highlights the ongoing tension between traditional boxing and the growing influence of social media stars in the sport. Whether Paul can prove himself as a legitimate challenger to top-tier boxers like Joshua remains to be seen, but his continued calls for high-profile matchups suggest that he is determined to push the boundaries of what's possible in boxing. As the debate continues, it's clear that the future of boxing may be shaped by these unorthodox matchups for better or for worse.